world unexplored, no tome unread, no dice unrolled.
Hi Bob, and welcome on our channel here on No Dice on Road.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure for us. We know each other just for a couple of days, and we noticed your latest Kickstarter campaign as an author of tabletop RPGs related products, and it intrigued us. So here we are. We were curious about your background, and so we can talk about it. So the first point is for me to know better, know something more about you. Where did you start your passion for RPGs, and what was your first experience?
Oh man, it was 1987.
Precisely.
I was yeah, back when we had to make our own dice from the lava that was still welling up from the Earth's molten core. And a friend of mine invited me. This is the days of first edition AD&D, and he invited me over. And something like 2 days later, I went back home and pestered my parents until they bought me the player's handbook. And yeah, I've just been going ever since. I had played all through, my military service, then in university, and ever since. So
It is a very long time that you play tabletop RPGs. So, and my first thought is about the influence of this starting point on your current work. Do you think that that first experience still has an effect on what you write right now as an author?
oh sure. We always fall in love and prefer our first exposure to something, whether it's music or art or RPGs, that kind of stuff. I still prefer a more simple old school game to a very complicated game. Like I fell away from D&D during the third edition years, third edition 3.5, never quite could wrap my head around Pathfinder because it was so complex. Just creating a character could take hours, and I just was But I played through all those years. I played everything, from Vampire to Call of Cthulhu to obscure RPGs that probably no one has ever heard of, to my wife's favorite game, which is Rollmaster.
It is a very technique and complex game compared to others example that you made. So
Yeah.
it's very far from your usual tastes, I think.
Yeah, my comfort zone is, describe what you want your character to do and let the GM decide what to roll. That,
Simple and clear.
which is, yeah, it's almost impossible with games like Rollmaster or something like that. But I ended up coming back to embrace a more complex game with fourth edition of D&D. And because that was also complicated to build characters, but I loved the design of 4E.
More playful, I think. More, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, everybody had something to do.
Yeah,
on
that's a
their
very
turn.
good point. Underestimated, but good point about that edition.
Yeah, I did that for a while. It was very cool to hate 4E, but I once I finally played it, I just, whoa, dang, this is really slick. And then I was hooked.
And well, this makes me think about one thing. What aspects of this first experience, I mean, the first edition of D&D or your favorite old school games, do you bring to your works? Which aspect of adventure design or NPC design do you bring in what you write? That, in my humble opinion, is what you want to find on the gaming table.
There's the most important thing for me when I play, and that's why a thing I try to keep in mind when I design adventures, is having my decisions as a player have an impact on the adventure, right? Like if I botch a roll, I want it to have an effect. If I crit, I want it to have an effect. If I decide to go this way rather than that way, it needs to have an effect. And that can be hard to do when you're creating an adventure for sale, because you can never tell the goofy stuff that players will come up with. The completely loopy plans that they can create. So when I design an adventure, I'm really into system agnostic adventure design now, where I'm not writing an adventure for D&D or Shadow Dark or even my own system. I want to make things so that anyone can run this adventure in any system, assuming that the GM has the ability to decide how to resolve the uncertainties. And also to give branches. So if the players decide they're going to go right, this happens. If they decide they're going to go left, this happens. So, and that, I think that's the most important thing for me, at least, to put into my adventures, rather than just have them be a railroad that chugs along from start to finish, you know. And then also, on the other side of that, to have the outcome of the adventure impact the world in which the adventure exists, right? So if, say, they go into the dungeon and kill the vampire lord who lurks all the way down in the lowest level, what impact will that have on the world in which that adventure happens? Will there be a faction that likes the adventurers for that? Their renown goes up? Is there a faction that will hate them for that, so their renown goes down? And that, you know, that's something I do in my own game world when I'm running games. My players know very well that whatever they do something else is going to happen because of that.
I'm sure they also fear it.
They can, yeah, because they know how to run, which is important. You know, when you come across that foe that is simply too difficult to defeat and you run away, he knows who you are now.
Yeah,
like
precisely.
I just started a new campaign, a new game with some friends of my wife's, and the very first session, they foiled a ritual. They stopped a ritual at the behest of one faction. You know, here, I need you to do this for me. Well, they went and did the thing. Well, the faction that was conducting the ritual now knows that these pieces are on the game board. So anything you do, someone is going to like you, someone is not going to like you, and others will remain neutral. So no choice is a 100% good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in my opinion, this is a very modern idea, even if you are talking about loving old school games, because this idea, in my opinion, are very separate.
Yeah.
You can keep an old style, but transform your adventure in something that has modern ideas, as you as you just stated.
Yeah.
And you also talked about your game, your tabletop role-playing game. Do you want to tell us more about it?
Oh, yeah. Well, Spears and Spells is something that, you know, I've been playing. It didn't have that name, but it's something that, you know, I was using myself for a long time, probably 5, 6, 7 years. And because I wanted something that was simple, you know, and all it uses is 6-sided dice. And you're rolling under your stats. It's 4 stats between 3 and 18. And you want, depending on how hard the GM decides the task is. Well, I call it the ref in the book, but how hard the ref decides the task is, you might roll 3 dice, you might roll 2 dice, you might roll 4 or 5 dice. But the goal is to roll under that stat. And it, rather than have like character classes like 5e, where once you gain a level, you might be able to do this thing, it instead uses talents, where you can you roll for how many talents you have in startup, in character creation, and then every level you get another talent, and you pick it from the list in the books. And that could be anything from having scaly skin and a lizard-like tail, to being able to cast spells, to being able to heal people with a touch. These are all discrete talents that you pick out. And that's what defines the character. Like, the game doesn't care if you're an elf or a dwarf or a human or a half-dragon or whatever. Doesn't matter. The game doesn't care if you wield a big honking sword or you shoot starlight out of your fingertips, because you do a d6's worth of damage with your attacks per level. So at first level, you do 1d6. Second level, you do 2d6, and so on. And you can split it up. You can hit somebody with one great big wallop and do all your damage, or you can pew, 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 you know, and the game doesn't care what your attacks look like, doesn't care what you look like. It's just, that's the way it works. And the most important thing, for me at least, is the referee. The ref rolls no dice. So
Probably it is
Yeah.
also easier to keep track of what is happening in the world this way.
Yeah, because I don't have to stop and worry about where my dice are. Okay, how many dice do I have to roll for that? If I say the monster attacks your character, you can roll to dodge that by rolling under one of your stats. And then if you fail to dodge and take damage, you can resist by rolling under one of your stats and soak some of that damage up. So the monsters don't roll to hit. And the monsters don't roll to dodge. If the player rolls a hit with their attack, damage is dealt. It's simple. I wanted fast, and let's keep going. So
It perfectly makes sense. And well, you talked about this original role-playing game, but I noticed that you own a store, that you own a company, and you also produce other kind of products, adventurers, and much more. If you want to talk to us about it, it would be amazing.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It started, well, like my Kickstarter that's running now, Legendary Locations. That's how Kabouter Games got started, because I started on DM's Guild, you know, that offshoot of Drive-Thru RPG, with 5th edition stuff, just on a lark. Like 2 weeks after it opened up, I was like, my wife said, "Why don't you write something for that?" Okay. So I started jamming my old notes together. At any rate, a couple of years ago, I had all this stuff, places that I had designed just for fun, for my own world. Whether it was I had a bunch of taverns, I had some religious sites, I had some villages with NPCs and stuff, just in case the adventurers would go wandering through it. Because like many GMs, I'm addicted to world building, even when it's not necessary. I'll find a cool map and I'll wonder what lives there, who lives there, and why. Anyway, I had all these things, and I thought, well, I don't want to put that on DM's Guild, because none of it is particularly 5th edition. None of it is suitable to the DM's Guild restrictions. Or, you know, you have to keep things in like the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or something like that. So I thought, why not start my own little goofy publishing house that consists of just me doing everything. Well, the editing I send to other people, because you should never edit your own words. And the Legendary Locations is what came out of that. And put up a bunch of those things. And yeah, I looked around a couple of months ago and discovered I had all this stuff that probably should be in one big book. So I figured, okay, I started mashing it all together and said, yeah, maybe people will
Let's
like it
do
if I
it.
kickstart this. Maybe let's kickstart it, see what happens. I can, pay another editor to go over everything. I maybe can add some art, that kind of stuff. And then I found the cover art from Dean Spencer, that, a fairly famous American movie. And I always wanted to use that in something. So, yeah. And I ended up I just put the finishing touches on the 15th NPC that I expect to put in the chapter at the end of the book, because we had the stretch goal every so often, once we reach a certain point, every so often I'll make another NPC. So I think I'm up to 15 now.
Not bad.
Yeah, and I
you have
did.
still some days.
Yeah, and it's all system neutral. As long as you're playing some generic medieval setting, fantasy setting, these characters will work. These places will work. And, maybe I suppose you could take it and jam it all together and make a world out of it. I never bothered, because my players tend to wander from place to place to place, and then burn it down and wander off to the next place, because, yeah, they're players. Once
That's
they get
player
sick of it,
job.
they set fire to it,
It perfectly makes sense. And
But yeah, so it started with that, and then I went into other system and setting neutral content. Then, it tested. I found I really liked systems like Five Torches Deep. It's a lovely game. 5e Light. Then Shadow Dark came out. Now I'm just like, ooh, love me some Shadow Dark. And yeah, so I try to make all of my adventure content suitable for any kind of 6-stat fantasy game. So I include like monster stat blocks for 5e, spears and spells, and generic OSR.
It's a useful technique, I think.
I think, yeah, because you can play them in any system. Like if you want to pull it into, I don't know, Rollmaster or Chaosium's basic role playing, you can do it. You're just going to have to find monsters that match your system. Because I basically tell you, okay, if this check, right, like to unlock this door should be a hard check, right? Because I think, having played a lot of 5e since it came out and run it at conventions and at game stores and stuff, one group will have an easy time unlocking that door, and another group, it'll be next to impossible. So I found that, and this is from publishing a lot of 5e adventures and getting a lot of feedback, that saying, okay, the DC to open that lock is 18. Well, for some tables, who cares? Don't even roll. And for other tables, they're stuck. There's no way they're getting in that door.
It makes sense.
So I would rather write an adventure and say, okay, it should be hard for your party to get through this door. So if you know your table, you know your players as a GM. So if 18 is super easy, well, make the DC 22. And if it's too hard, for 18 is too hard, make it 12. So make it challenging, right? And I discovered kind of by accident that means you can play it with pretty much any system.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of knowing your players, knowing your game system, and just crack on.
It makes things even smoother for the GM, because the GM needs to know the game system, so knows even better than the author of an adventure what is the correct channel. Yeah, it's a spot.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that your experience is so evident, and so I'm sure you are also putting it into your works, and I can't wait to read some of them. But do you have any advice that you would give to a person who would like to start writing his own supplements, adventures, or whatever about his favorite RPG?
Yeah. Yeah. First and most important, just write the damn thing. Don't worry about if it's any good. Because, fun fact, it won't be. I look back on my early stuff and with horror, it's just crap.
It was me.
But it's like anything else, though. You know, when you write your first song, when you paint your first painting, the first time, your first try is just going to be garbage compared to your later work. But if you don't do it in the first place, you're never going to get good. Right?
This is really inspiring.
So, and you will get good because practice makes perfect, right? So yeah, rule 1, just write the damn thing. Rule 2, now we're going to get a little technical because we're going to talk about adventure writing. Try and never put advancement behind a check, right? So if you have that locked door and you want that locked door to be really important, right? Recognize that even though you're designing it really well and you're saying it should be a hard check and you're not putting DCs on it or anything like that, recognize that there's still people going to get stuck at that door. The dice will betray them no matter what they do. Somebody's dead or something like that, right? And if you don't have any way around that door other than like a rogue picking the lock,
it's a problem.
It's going to stop. The adventure is over. Done. And that sucks when you're trying to play through it. So always give 3 ways around a problem. The other 2 ways may be more difficult to find, right? I like to do a medium way, an easy way, and a hard way, right?
With consequences.
Right. So, yeah, if you want to choose the easy way, it'll take you longer, let's say. It's less dangerous for the character's survival, but it takes you longer, and it takes like 3 days to go that way, and you only have 3 days. So before the world ends. So once you get to the end of that path, you really have to hustle. There'll be no taking long rests. There'll be no waiting around or anything like that. Boom, you got to get there and you got to get it done, right? The medium way has medium risk, but you know, you'll have a little more time to mess about with once you get there. And the high risk route gets you there in the shortest amount of time, but you may very well die on the way. But the good news is, once you get to the end, you may have a little extra time to rest up, plan, heal, all that kind of stuff. So that's thing number 2. Thing number 3 is ignore the internet when it starts bitching about railroads. Because if you're clever and the GM running your adventure is clever, they will never know. Right? Like those 3 routes that I'm talking about, the 3 ways around a problem, they all end at the same place. It's not like, you know, if they choose the route, if you're at that intersection, you can go straight ahead, right or left, that everything changes if you turn right. Everything changes if you turn left. Everything changes if you go straight. Now, all 3 ways come back to the lich in the in the lowest part of the dungeon. You know, the big evil guy, the BBEG that you have to kill or whatever in order to succeed. You can have your railroad, you just have to be clever about hiding it.
Hiding, and probably the most interesting thing in that situation is how you reach that firm point. And that's a lot about creating a good story. And I really appreciate your advices. Are very, very wise.
And that works that works also if you're not writing adventures, but instead using someone else's published adventure.
It's
I don't even remember where I got it, but I was pressed for time at something. And the adventure was, the players start in the seaport. They hear about the Pirate King all the way over there in those islands, and they're supposed to get on a ship and go to the islands and defeat the Pirate King. Well, they said, nah, we want to go to the mountains. So the Pirate King became a bandit lord in the mountains. The ship became the caravan that they wanted to guard to get over the mountains. And it's just, change the names. You don't even have to change the stat blocks. Just change your descriptions of it and change the names and play the same damn module.
a very wise solution, and it works. So why
Well,
not?
it's either that or go home. And I like to hang out with my friends, so I'd rather, modify things a little bit. Plus, you get a little bit mad, right? You get a little bit mad because your friends are like, nah, screw whatever you just spent all this time and effort coming up with. We want to go this way, And you're like, huh, okay, all right.
Let's do
You're
it.
going to go there anyhow.
Okay, so it's I admit that your advice are very simple, but I recognize them in my campaigns too. They actually work, so it's I completely agree with you. And I noticed that we talked about your company, but we didn't give any reference for your website, your social
Oh,
medias. If you want just to say where people can reach you,
we are it. No matter where, I keep saying we, as though I have a mouse here in my pocket or something. The company is Kabouter Games, and kaboutergames.com. You can find us there. You can search on Drive Through RPG for Kabouter Games. All our social media is all Kabouter RPG, I think. Yeah, like Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook is all the same. I can't think of anything else. And if you want to give us a try without spending any money at all, if you go to our website, a thing will pop up that lets you sign up for the newsletter. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a link to a free PDF, which is one of the legendary locations after I figured out what I was doing with that. So it's one of the ones, not one of the first ones, because they weren't all that good. But it's one of the later ones that had a little more practice, or it's a little more polished and refined. So yeah, that gives you a taste of what you're getting into.
Thank you also for this last advice. And I'll be sincere, it is a pleasure for me knowing some authors like you that are moved by passion and by love for this amazing hobby. So
Yeah,
thank-
well, let me plug one more thing.
Sure.
Because
How many
if
more?
there's another piece of advice that I forgot, there's a fourth piece
Go
of
for it.
advice. I will send you a link that you can put in the show notes here. Again, mouse in my pocket. We call it the Creators Assistance Program. Okay, where you fill out this form, you pitch your idea, right? You want to write an adventure, it's about this. Okay. I'll work with you to develop that into something publishable. And then I'll publish it and split the profits with you.
Okay. Great.
Publish it on Drive Through RPG. You'll get 50% of the cover price and hopefully learn a thing or two along the way.
It's very useful, especially for who wants to start to write maybe his first or second supplement, and a very wise idea.
Yeah, I like to help people, and I like to share what I've learned. Whether or not it's useful is for other people to decide, but I like to share what I've learned. I like to help people. I really would love to get more people into the publishing side of RPGs that aren't middle-aged white guys. More brown people, more people of varying gender identities, all that kind of stuff. Empower them to tell their stories. So And because I'm so into the OSR and I call myself an OSR enthusiast, there can be some real jerks in the OSR, and I want to try and prove to people that, listen, they're here, okay? They're loud, and we keep them over there. Let's improve the landscape. You know what I mean? Let's be welcoming and inclusive and get those voices out there.
It's a pleasure to hear about this approach, and I hope many more authors use this kind of kindness. By the way, I thank you for being here. I'm sure that we will talk about your products in the next month, and it will be a pleasure each time. So thank you, Bob, and well, see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thanks for staying with us. If you've enjoyed yourself, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.